The Kingdom of Bhutan is nestled in the glorious mountain range of the Himalayas. To the south, its biggest trading partner, India, and to the north, Tibet, now China. It's an absolutely magical place to visit. When I first went there, it was in November to watch the Blackneck Crane Festival. And I was expecting more the happy chaos of an India or a Nepal, which neighbours it closely. But actually, when I landed, it felt much more like Japan. It's a very small country, a population of about 750,000, and the attention to detail, the great care and the great politeness that people have, it's a very holy country. They have these incredible fortresses, which are also administrative centres for local government, and they're also split into one half of monastic practices as well. And actually, it's also very difficult to tell the difference between what is a monastery and what is just someone's house. The care that people take over the finely ornate carved wood of their house. They do paintings on their house and beautiful tile work. So aesthetically, it's just a stunning country to travel around. The flag tells you a lot about the country. It's split diagonally up the middle between yellow, which represents the monarchy. It's on its 5th king currently, although the 4th king is actually still alive and just celebrated his 70th birthday. And then the colour orange, which represents Buddhism, of which this deeply religious country is most famous for. In the middle is the Thunder Dragon. The country is so named, the country of the Thunder Dragon, from the huge Himalayan storms that would rip through the valleys with thunder and lightning, which sounded like the roar of a great dragon. Traveling around, most people fly into Paro, which is up in the northwest. Now, it's very interesting because actually there's only about 25 pilots in the world who are qualified to fly into Paro. It's a very mountainous country, as you would imagine, and Paro itself is in a small valley, so it's very difficult to fly in. That means you'll have to change flights in one of the sort of surrounding hubs of Delhi, Bangkok, or Kathmandu is very popular as well. And then you fly in with either Bhutanese Airlines or Air. Now, as soon as you're in Paro, they have a beautiful Thimphu, which is the fortress based on the river there. But the sort of jewel in the crown and what you'll have seen in Bhutan on postcards or the first photo that someone's likely to show you is the Tiger's Nest, which is based up in the mountains surrounding Paro itself. It's about 2 hours to walk and or hike up to it. It's a bit of a schlep up. Obviously, it's a fair bit of altitude, but most people can manage it. There's even a coffee shop usefully situated about halfway up, which has beautiful views to this tiny monastery, which is perched on the side of the mountain. It was known as the Tiger's Nest as famously Guru Rinpoche flew there on the back of a female tiger when he first discovered the site to build the monastery, hence the name the Tiger's Nest. And then from there at YellowWood, we offer lots of different types of trips in Bhutan. A lot of them are tied into the local festivals. There's the Paro Festival in March. You have the Thimphu, which is the capital city festival, the Gangte Festival, which takes place in September or October. It changes every year. You have the Blackneck Crane Festival, which takes place in November. So we tend to tie up our itineraries or group tours, or obviously tailor-made tours as well, around these festivals, because it really is like stepping back in time. The costumes haven't changed for a millennium, and the dancing is all performed by locals, literally the local villagers or people who live in the cities, and the children get involved. And actually there's far more Bhutanese going to watch these performances than travelers or tourists. So it really is an amazing spectacle. The Bhutanese government has been very, very smart. I think they looked at neighbouring Nepal, which is obviously extremely famous for hiking and Mount Everest, but in some ways has been a victim of its own success. Some hotspots like Everest Base Camp have fallen victim to over-tourism. And with such a small country and a small population, the Bhutanese monarchy and government were very smart that they've actually introduced what's called a sustainable development fee, aka the tourist tax, for anyone who comes to visit Bhutan. It used to be $200 per person per night would go to the Bhutanese government, I think they realized that that was a little bit severe, and so they brought that down to $100 per person per night. So if you stayed in Bhutan for 10 nights, for example, $1,000 you would pay to us and we would pay to the Bhutanese government in order to retrieve your visa, which we would then give to you. By doing that, they've ensured that more money actually goes into the country with less footfall of tourists, which is fantastic for everyone, because they actually been very, very good at putting this money to work in really meaningful, sustainable projects. A classic example of this is the Trans Bhutan Trail. So it goes the complete length of the country from east to west through the foothills of the Himalaya. It was the original trading route. It was part of the ancient Silk Roads that went all the way from China through to Europe. And it fell into disrepair in around about the 70s when they started putting in paved roads, obviously for trucks to get around the country. That money from the Sustainable Development Fee has gone back into building up the Trans Bhutan Trail. To do the whole thing would take about a month. But we, in a lot of our itineraries, we walk along sections of it. And it's absolutely stunning because you can see in the horizon the messy white snow-capped peaks of the high Himalaya. There's the Jumalhari, known as the bride of Changchenjunga, which is the third highest mountain in the world and sits on the Nepalese border. And then we tend to walk through sort of the more forested foothills where you get lots of local monkeys, you get to walk through farmsteads and meet the local people. There's nothing beats really walking through a country on your own 2 feet. I was very amazed the first time I went just how many people speak English. What the country has done in the last 50 years has really been phenomenal. I've seen some of the presentations that the Prime Minister has given at the United Nations. 50 years ago, child mortality rates, illiteracy rates were really at third world levels. And the country has brought itself up to, as I said, it feels like a Japan, it feels like a first world country. And a lot of that has been through education, and just using their resources in a smart and practical way. The country is 99% uses renewable energy. You can see some of the solar panel farms when you walk through there. And obviously they have a lot of huge, heavy rivers and have hydro dam plants as well, which aren't an eyesore at all, actually. It's actually really nice to also know the country's carbon positive as well, because there's just so much of it is forested, which is a carbon sink. Walking through the local villages, kids will come up and chit chat to you. As I said, the local houses, the people take such pride in painting their houses, in carving ornate wooden designs. There's beautiful lacquered tiles on the roofs. Something that's quite interesting is the phallic symbol, which you will see painted absolutely everywhere, all over people's houses. It sounds very rude, but when you're there, somehow it's not. And I think a lot of it was to encourage fertility. It's a small population. A lot of that population are monks or nuns, and so have taken a life of celibacy. So I think a lot of it is to sort of help the population and encourage the population to increase. In the trips we do, we tend to stay in sort of hotels in the cities, but once we're out in the sticks, we much prefer local homestays. And local Bhutanese families have opened up their homes for additional income. We all sit around the wood burning fire. There's obviously a chimney to take out the smoke, and chit chat with them, trying the local alcohol, trying the chili cheese, or they love chilies for some reason, absolutely draped over people's houses and on roofs drying. There's chilies everywhere. And one of their favorite dishes is the chili cheese dish, which isn't as spicy as it sounds. And the Bhutanese tend to like meals in a buffet style. So they will have lots and lots of different types of dishes. So the potatoes or vegetables or chili cheese or certain meat dishes. And then everyone sort of helps themselves onto their plate from everything. It's a very touching country. It's a very spiritual country. You are up in the high Himalaya. You've got the sort of smell of ice from the mountains. going up your nose. There's such a gentleness and a calmness and a feeling that this country is just doing it right. And I would really recommend it to anyone.